to form a plexus from the anterior ramus of some spinal nerves. And what is a plexus? It's a collection of nerves. So you've got right here the ones that are coming out of the neck. This will be the cervical plexus. This is the brachial plexus. No plexus forms by the spinal nerves in the thoracic region. This is the lumbar plexus, and this is the sacral plexus. And those are all formed from the anterior ramus of the spinal nerves coming out of that area. And of course, this is what it looks like as well. So let's look at the cervical plexus. So the cervical plexus, you can see in this region right here, coming that little wad of nerves that comes out of the cervical region of the spinal cord. Here is the cervical plexus here. Now, don't freak. I'm not going to have you label all the nerves from the cervical plexus at all. But I do expect you to be able to look at this picture and tell if this is the cervical plexus, which isn't hard because, of course, the atlas and the axis are there. And there's no ribs, so it can't be in the thoracic region. There's no sacrum, so it can't be in the sacral region. And atlas and axis tell you that it's actually in the cervical region. So it's got a whole bunch of nerves in it. You only have to know one out of here. And primarily what these are doing is they're innervating the anterior neck muscles and the neck and portions of the head and shoulder. That's what the whole plexus does. So it's like neck sensation and neck muscles, a bunch of these neck muscles that you didn't learn. But the important functionality that you need to know out of this plexus is that it innervates one super duper important muscle from right here at the phrenic nerve, which is the only nerve that you need to know. And you don't need to be able to pick the phrenic nerve out of this picture because it doesn't look a thing like this in a cadaver or a person anyway. But the phrenic nerve, where I would identify it if I were looking at it, is there's a left and right phrenic nerve that actually go down and innervate something pretty important to all of us, which is the diaphragm. So these innervate the diaphragm. Okay, the phrenic nerves, left and right phrenic nerves, innervate the diaphragm. So one muscle, it doesn't have any sensory function, not the whole plexus. The plexus does have sensory function, but the phrenic nerve doesn't have any sensory function. So I want you to look at this, and I asked you a question. Where would you have to injure the spinal cord in order to lose motor innervation of the diaphragm? Well, if you look, this is the phrenic nerve, and it's got some fibers that are coming through C5, some fibers that were coming through C4, and some fibers that were coming from C3, which is where the phrase C345 keeps you alive. So if you injure above C3, in all likelihood, you would have paralysis of the diaphragm, maybe even complete paralysis of the diaphragm. Okay, now the next plexus is the brachial plexus, and that's the one that you have the most nerves to learn out of. So let's look for the brachial plexus and start to figure out what we're looking at. So again, you don't have to label the nerves out of this picture, okay? Not for me. You do have to know structure-function relationships. I will draw this for you on the board when we were in class, show you where the M is and help you find the identification. But for this lecture here, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that what this does is it's coming out lower in the cervical vertebra, so from C5 to T1. So how would you be able to tell that this was the brachial plexus? Well, I don't see the atlas and the axis, which would tell me it was a cervical plexus, but I do see the first rib, which would tell me that it's going down to T1, okay? In addition, I'll just show you the M right now, and I'll show it to you again on a different picture. Once you get down to actually the nerve level, do you see that M right there? That's a good identifier for this plexus. When you are looking at it in a cadaver dissection, if you actually go to lab, you will generally find it in the armpit, in the axillary region. So there are quite a few nerves that you're going to learn out of here that innervate muscles that you already learned. So let me point them out to you, and then if you get a chance to go to lab, look at them on the cadaver. The brachial plexus looks like just spaghetti when you first look at it, But if you give yourself a minute, and I'll give you some guidance with doing this, if you give yourself a minute, you can tell both nerves from arteries and veins and then the nerves from each other as well. But for right now, let me go ahead and show you where these nerves go. So this guy right here, do you see? This is the long thoracic nerve. And that one actually, you wouldn't look for so much in the armpit because it actually comes out kind of up here and then it runs along the lateral surface of the chest. And it innervates a muscle that you already learned. It doesn't have any sensory function, and the muscle is the serratus anterior. So the muscle that it innervates is the serratus anterior, which you can kind of see where it's going. And then the medial and lateral pectoral nerves are not shown here, but where you would look for them, and they're also not shown on this picture, but where you would look for them when you were actually looking at a dissected cadaver is you would lift up the pectoralis major, and then you would find the lateral and medial pectoral nerves going two different places in there. So the medial pectoral nerve actually innervates both of the pecs, no sensory function, pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. And then the lateral pectoral nerve just innervates the pectoralis major. So the pectoralis major, think about it this way, big enough that it needs innervation from two, and the pectoralis minor does not need innervation from both. So that's the lateral and medial pectoral nerve. And the only place they're actually shown on this picture is like right here. I would never ask you from that. That would be silly. But they innervate the pecs, okay? And then the axillary nerve, you should be able to see right here. It's this nerve, when you're looking at the cadaver, it actually comes off and then dives really deep into the armpit. And you can see it right here. So it comes off and then it dives deep. And it does what you'd think it's doing by looking at this picture. What it's actually going to do is innervate two muscles that are out there. So it comes off and dives out, and it innervates the deltoid and the teres minor. So it's actually going under and innervating the deltoid and the teres minor. That's the motor function, okay? And this is the first one that you're learning a sensory function for. The sensory function of the deltoid, or the sensory function of the axillary nerve, is that it innervates the lateral arm near the shoulder. And then let's see, the median nerve. Let's find the median nerve. So if you see here, do you see? I'll draw the M for you one more time. So here's our M. Up, down, up, down. The middle one right here, following down. The middle portion of the M is, luckily, going to form the median nerve. And notice where it goes, right? The median nerves go straight down the middle of the anterior arm and forearm and all the way down here. So what the median nerve does is it innervates 6 anterior forearm muscles. So it's going to the anterior forearm. And you know what muscles are on the anterior forearm. There's all those flexors, and then some of them aren't called flexors, but they have flexion as a function. And so let's look at the nerves, and remember where the median nerve is going. It's going right down the anterior arm, the anterior forearm, and it innervates all of these guys. Not surprisingly, these anterior forearm muscles include the flexor carpi radialis, the flexor digitorum superficialis, the pronator teres, right? The flexor digitorum profundus, the lateral part of it, the flexor pollicis longus, and the palmaris longus. So if you can't remember what is innervated here, anything on the anterior forearm, and you can't remember, guess median nerve. Might not be right, but it's close to right. Okay, and then the sensory function for these guys is, so I like to think of these like this. So the median nerve does this, yes, primarily wrist flexion, although also this, does this, and it feels this, lateral digits and lateral palm. So does this, median nerve, right? Does this, feels this. That's the median nerve, Okay, now let's do the musculocutaneous nerve. So again, here's my M, up, down, up, down. The lateral portion of the M right here, do you see this little bugger right here? Is the musculocutaneous nerve. And the fact that it's called musculocutaneous is going to tell you that it has sensory and motor function. And if you look at where it's going, right, it's going right down the anterior portion of the arm. Okay, not forearm, because it's over here on the forearm, but the anterior portion of the arm. So what the musculocutaneous nerve does is it innervates 3 of the anterior arm muscles, biceps brachii, brachialis, and coracobrachialis. That means that it does this, right? Not this. That's what the median nerve did, but this. And then it has a weird function for the sensory function of it. This little bugger right there, the musculocutaneous nerve. So it's got those muscles, and then it actually feels this. So it feels the lateral forearm. So one more time, the musculocutaneous nerve does this, feels this. What did the median nerve do? It did this and felt this. Okay? All right. The ulnar nerve is next. Okay. So the ulnar nerve, let's find it, and then we'll go back to that picture. Okay. So the ulnar nerve is the last part of the M. So we had musculocutaneous, which was lateral. We had the median nerve, which was the medial portion of the M. And then the medial portion is the ulnar nerve. Okay, the ulnar nerve is right here. So the ulnar nerve does the other anterior forearm muscles that we didn't do before. So we did most of the anterior forearm muscles with the median nerve. The ulnar nerve does the other ones. And then a whole bunch of the hand muscles that you don't learn. So what muscles were left? The muscles that were left were the flexor carpi ulnaris, which probably doesn't surprise you, and the flexor digitorum profundus, the medial portion of it. So what does the ulnar nerve do? It helps with the median nerve to do this, right? Wrist flexion and digit flexion. And then what does it do sensory? It feels this. So the ulnar nerve does this, feels this. The median nerve did this, feels this. Got it? Okay, so that's the ulnar nerve. And then the radial nerve, that radial nerve is a busy little bee. The radial nerve, oh, by the way, here's the picture of the ulnar nerve. So it does those and feels that, okay? And then the radial nerve, look at all the freaking muscles that the radial nerve does. If you can't remember what innervates a muscle in the arm or forearm, just guess radial nerve, because it does 3 posterior arm muscles and 8 posterior forearm muscles. Okay, so let's look at this little bugger. Okay, all the muscles, look at them all. And it does more than that too. These are just the ones that you have to know. Dang! So the triceps brachii, yeah? The anconeus. Did you guys learn anconeus? Can't remember. The brachioradialis, the supinator, the extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digitorum, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, abductor pollicis longus. So pretty much the whole freaking side here, right, which does this, right? Okay, wrist and digits, all of that, and the back side of the arm. So the radial nerve pretty much does all of this, right? Bring the arm and the forearm and the pretty much like extension of the whole back side of the arm, plus a couple of other things. So that's the radial nerve. And then what does it do? It pretty much has sensory functions, most of the same place that it had motor functions. So it does this and it feels this all along the back side of the arm. That's the radial nerve. Okay. And that is the brachial plexus. And I'll do thoracic and the other 2 plexuses in the next one.